There we go. Jolly good. Okay, so this is Jonathan Clark here. We are here with the legend in his own life at lunchtime, Mr. Thom Dennis, ex-Marine, guru, wise old owl, talented and handsome, and one of our speakers at our upcoming Hawaii event. Thom and I, we've known each other for 2 years, roughly, through our networking groups. And yeah, my observation of Thom is he often sits quietly, listens carefully, doesn't say much, but when he does, people's eyebrows go up and their jaws drop. That's been my experience in a good way, because you usually have an insightful take on things. So tell us who you are, Thom. What do you do? Who do you do it for? All that stuff.
Okay, so I run an organization called Serenity in Leadership. You said Thom, so I didn't think I needed to say my name again.
What amongst friends.
And I've been working with organizations since really 1991. The work I do is based really on the master's degree that I did, which split an approach into organizations at an individual, group, and organizational level. So the three levels. So at an individual level, I coach, typically executives and typically in fairly large organizations. That's the way it's gone. At a team level, then there's two things really. There's team development, team building, and there's the facilitation of team events, which is one of my fortes, I would say. And I've facilitated team events really in most countries now. I mean, not every country, but an awful lot, except for China and Australia. But yeah. At an organizational level, then I work with them to help them change their cultures. So that's the approach. More recently, I've been speaking about change, culture, the dysfunctions of behavior and the use of power and the abuse of power in organizations, which sort of took me into the land of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm not particularly an advocate of diversity. I think it's a bit of a distraction. And if we focus on inclusion, then diversity ceases to have its edge. So I'm very interested in inclusion, and any culture change program I do now, I make sure that inclusion is one of the fundamental stanchions of the whole approach. In terms of the dysfunction in organizations, I think an awful lot of this is down to the masculine and the feminine. I see the masculine that is expressed is it's very immature.
Okay.
And one could say dysfunctional. And the feminine is kind of in the shadow of that. And in many people, it's sort of subjugated itself to survival and therefore adopting the same masculine. I've never quite said it like that before, but I think that does sort of say it really, in a sense. We all have a masculine, we all have a feminine aspect or traits. And in every person, it's different. There's some women who have a lot of masculine traits. You have some men who have a lot of feminine traits. And long may it be so. It's the mixture that goes to create the strengths in groups of people. But all the time that the feminine is suppressed and the masculine is is an unhealthy one, then we're in a mess.
Mm.
And I think that is one of the it's a really strong frame to see how we've got to explain how we've got to where we are today, where as was it Scott Galloway spoke the other day, and he's such an interesting man, and he was talking about I thought I had it easily to hand, but maybe I do. It's the imbalance that exists now in society, particularly Western society, is so
rampant.
it's awful. It's completely awful. And so what that does is, well, I think actually we're in for a very bumpy ride over the next couple of years, because each time in history that imbalance has got so bad. I think, basically it's 0.1% now of people who are billionaires own 99% of the wealth, whatever. I mean, I can't remember the stats, but
balance is skewed way over one end.
So that is a mess. It's a mess, and so that's a very important aspect. And the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and it's an explosive mix, and it is going to it's going to be a very large distraction, I suspect. I wish I could remember that stat now, because it's annoying me, and it's
that's okay. That's okay. Hey, listen, we can edit this as well. So is there likely to be a crisis point in our resetting of the system?
Well,
historically
there needs to be. It's for every $100 created in the past 10 years globally, right? For every $100 created in the past 10 years globally, $54.40 went to the top 1%. 49.9 went to the 50 to 99%, and 70 cents went to the bottom 50%.
Wow.
Now that's a hell of a statistic.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about AI, which I do quite a lot now, in the same way that the disruptors that we used to talk about, we don't talk about them anymore, but I mean Airbnb, Uber, I used to say Uber, but I got told off when I was in America, it's Uber. And such companies, actually, everyone said they were amazing because they were disruptors and they were producing all this employment. But actually, they were just systems to give an awful lot of money to very few people. And so we are propagating that dysfunction. You look at the strikes in the UK, and the government talk about we mustn't have inflationary measures, so we can't pay anybody anymore. Meanwhile, CEOs have increased their pay by hundreds of percent, and in real terms, their employees have reduced. So it's an unbelievably biased system that we live in, and actually, it is a kind of house of cards. And eventually, politicians will be called out on this, because at the moment they're peddling a fantasy, which
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
most people are taking up.
Mm-hmm.
So, all that to say that there is change afoot, and AI. I've been saying recently that for me the pandemic was a rehearsal. It was a very painful rehearsal, but it was a rehearsal for what's coming next, where the fleet of foot of leaders did very well. You know, it was one of the most dissonant things that the Queen said was that we're all in this together, and we're all and actually, I can see one of the palace speech writers writing that for her, but it's nonsense. It actually accentuated the differentials and the separation.
Mm-hmm.
And AI, which is coming very, very soon, well, it's not coming, it's here, is going to continue that trend. What's fascinating about AI is that actually nobody knows how it's going to develop.
Yep.
And it's going to have some superb positive effects, but also some significant negative ones, and nobody knows where the balance will lie. Like, for instance, it's very interesting. Somebody was saying the other day that there are 4 categories of investment in AI. And I really hope I can remember them. So I can't remember them all. One is killing, i.e. the defense industry.
Right.
Another is gambling, which is the investment world.
Yeah.
One is selling, and it's the first one that I can't remember, but I'll think of it in a second. But what's interesting is that the amount of investment that is going into each of those, which in a sense are either not much use or just designed to make more money, the amount of investment that's going in there is enormous, because there's so much money to be made in that area. Whereas the investment in, for instance, medicine, where there are some very exciting developments, is infinitesimal in comparison.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's money in war. There's money in conflict. Technologies are irrevocable. Once we've invented something, we can't pretend we don't know how not to. Right? There's a great line in the Oppenheimer movie, which is big and current at the moment, about the atomic bomb development. And there's a line where the scientists express the concern that we don't know if this is going to ignite the atmosphere of the planet or not. You know, it's like they were testing this weapon and they didn't know exactly how destructive it would be. It could have been a one and gone. But now we have it, we can't ignore it. And yes, I totally agree with you. I think all technology, well, I don't know if all of them, that's a generalization, but most technological advances bring with them inherent benefits, but they also bring with them inherent curses, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And it's about mitigating the downside. So tell me how we go from that global state of affairs to you working with leaders to mature them, to equip them, to empower them, to wake them up. Is that what it's about?
So the point is that because it's, as I said, there's the void inside oneself where the drive comes from. And people say, I'm very driven. And it's the answer, the clue is in the language. I am very driven.
By something.
So who's doing the driving?
Yeah.
And what you find is that an awful lot of highly driven executives actually are very damaged, or they are self-medicating to prevent or to hide that damage. Also, their behavior is affecting those around them, their families, and more particularly their children. So part of my approach is to say, let's identify that drive. Let's embrace it. Let's make it yours, but let's take it under your control.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's not about stopping driving, but it is actually being able to make conscious decisions about how and when and where you do the driving. I mean, I was stunned by the information I got when I was in New York about the self-medication that's going on. They said in a paper recently that of a company of 5,000 employees, the top 425 of the top 425, they reckon 75 are self-medicating.
Wow.
So that's a lot. And it's ironic because at the same time we have the emergence of psychedelic psychotherapy, which is amazing in its healing opportunities. And it was suppressed in the 60s and when they started the war on drugs, and all the research stopped. So the scientists now are really trying to catch up and use it because it has an amazing positive side. But that's a bit of an aside. So going back to the void, so there's the internal void, and then looking forward with AI, and behind that climate change, and behind that the population movement, of which we all sort of grumble about a couple of immigrants coming in. We have no conception of the effect of the movement in populations that are going to take place with climate change. So all that's coming. And looking forward, particularly with AI, I mean, with climate change, you could say, well, yeah, it's fairly obvious that it's happening. And, with the heating of the seas in the Antarctic now, which, unbelievable levels of temperature. The thing is, what we're dealing with is an incredibly complex system, and nobody really understands the interdependencies of them. So we're going to experience things that we weren't expecting, like it's been bloody freezing here all day today.
In August, yeah.
So looking forward, that you're looking into a void. And what a lot of leaders do, take a step back from that and say, well, let's go back to normal. Hence the big push to, for instance, stop working from home. All the resistance to working from home is taking place in the government and in the C-suites. Not everyone, but an awful lot. Why? Because they don't like change. They don't have so much control, and it's scary. So, but it's there. The working from home is now in the psyche. So leaders have got to be much more agile, to use an overused word, which means that since everything around them is uncertain and largely fairly unpredictable,
yeah,
they've got to be able to manage their state from within, not referring to any classical leadership book, for instance. So the structures that we've depended on to get us to where we are now have or are crumbling.
Crumbling, yeah.
So the principle that for me, the fundamental leadership skill for the future is self-awareness.
Okay.
And so when I'm working with people, I'm wanting to take them into themselves, to see themselves, understand who is driving the bus, as Ray Arata says. And when it's the little boy in the shorts who's 10 years old who's driving the bus, then we can actually notice that and take action to say, that distress with which you are driving the bus actually is not needed now. And
that holds trauma from the past.
Here's a much more solid base from which to work. So what that means then is that you're taking much more control of your own state. So that they say at the moment, Deloitte said the other day that 70% of C-suite members are now looking for a job that has less stress in it. And it's not surprising, because they've had all that they've had to do normally, shareholders, stakeholders, the board, and all the rest of it. And now they've got racial justice, they've got DEI, to put a big envelope on it. They've got mental well-being, and so on. And these are things that in the past, some CEOs were concerned about, but an awful lot weren't. They didn't see it as their job. And there's an interesting sort of conversation going on about, should you bring your whole self to work? Because country code, what country code is 254?
I don't recognize that. 254, I don't know.
I think it might be Nigeria or something. Anyway,
actually, I can understand a CEO totally agreeing with the uncertainty factor and all the externals and the changes of circumstances and all the different factors on the outside. I'm wondering if you get resistance at all when you ask them to look internally.
Yes, because it's terrifying for most people.
Therapy comes into the C-suite.
Well, my master's degree back in '94, that's when I started it, looked at all the psychotherapies. So we were looking at the envelopes of each psychotherapy, psychosynthesis, psychodynamic, TA, Gestalt, or integrative, all these different paradigms, if you like, that were being lived out in organizations. And I take that knowledge in with me. And, sometimes we do get into some fairly deep conversations, about parental influence and early trauma. And, I've studied trauma one way or another since the Falklands. Because I was involved in persuading the government, or the MOD, to accept that there was such a thing as PTSD, because they were denying it. And of course, one of the reasons they were denying it, as with everything in the government, was they were terrified of the amount of money they were going to have to pay out if they acknowledged it.
Yeah.
So that's always been an area of interest to me. And I think the most psychopathic behavior comes from early trauma.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yep.
And so it's an important aspect. And yes, you could say a lot of CEOs, if they wanted to go to a therapist, would go to a therapist because they don't want to, on the whole. Some do, but not many. But this resistance, I mean, what we have to find are the pain points. As someone said to me the other day, you'll only get change when things are sufficiently painful that the pain outweighs the fear of change.
Yep.
And so I'm on the lookout for leaders who are in pain. Actually,
which should be fairly easy to find.
But unfortunately, it's not an entry on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, yeah, or a gamer tag above the head. Yeah. That's interesting, because there's always been that. Traditionally, there's always been that kind of separation between, the entrepreneurial spirit, the capitalist thing, the making money, the making profits, level 5 on the spiral dynamics levels, and then the new age humanistic movement of the 60s and 70s, and then you get a blend of both. And people often go from hardcore business person, and then all of a sudden they get into spirituality, or you see criminals going to prison and get into religion, and they start to evolve in a certain direction, So I always look at it as evolution. I think you're helping people evolve from one stage to the next.
Yes.
But I can imagine the average shirt and tie or blouse and tie person saying, "Oh, wait a minute, Thom, this is about the economy. This is about regulation. This is about blah, 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 blah. This isn't about me." And I'm wondering how many would be willing to actually go, "Well, do you know what? Maybe you have a point. Maybe I am part of the issue here."
Well, you get some. I think we are in a very interesting phase of I think it's Margaret Wheatley talks about a book that was written a long time ago by an Englishman that was looking at every empire in history.
Mm-hmm.
They all go the same way.
Mm.
They all go the same. I mean, the phases are the same.
Yeah.
And we are in the final phases of decline in this.
It's the end of days. Oh no.
And so if you talk to some enlightened people, they will say that actually it's going to be different this time. But that's a philosophical conversation, which is probably not for this conversation. But I think what's very interesting is that the youth of today, and by the youth I'm talking about up to about sort of 27, 28, that kind of thing. These young people, and actually the kids that are being born now are very different. A lot of them are old souls. They have a lot of deep wisdom in them, and that is because that's going to be needed for the way the world develops. I think it was Mo Gaudat said the other day that AI is going to produce utopia. He says, "I am an absolute optimist about that." But he said to get to that, we have going to have to go through a lot of pain. And so, as I say, nobody knows how that's going to develop. But when I've done my best work, it's been with a CEO who has the vision to see that actually bringing someone like me into the organization will make a very considerable positive difference, even if it is a bit painful.
An easier transition.
Yeah. And, you can have fun doing it. You can do all sorts of things which are light. It's not all about being heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have that openness in the first place to have the conversation. So, the search for the they're not enlightened, but open-minded CEOs is an everyday thing. There are some really good people out there. Some in really good organizations, some in lousy organizations. There are good people out there, and so it's linking up with them and helping them nourish themselves and the change that they can see is needed.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Is what do you see as what does the CEO need to equip themselves with? Is it adaptability? Is it acceptance? Is it being able to dance and move on the spot? What are the traits that you need to adapt to survive?
Well, I come back to what I call self-awareness. So, with self-awareness comes the ability to be still, comes the ability to actually be present with your people. I recorded a podcast the other day, and Ray Martin, who I was talking to, I can't remember if it was him or me, but one of us said, the greatest gift you can give to another human being is your full presence. So that is very difficult when you're so busy you don't know which way you're turning, and your head is full of stuff. But these are the skills that they have to learn. We have to learn. I sort of see myself as being one step ahead of the people I'm working with on a development journey. So self-awareness, and it's interesting because out of self-awareness and that sense of presence comes all sorts of good things. You get better decision making, you get greater creativity, a much stronger ability to manage your own mental health. And all of these things lead to resilience, and everyone's talking about resilience at the moment. It's McKinsey's who talk about the two core principles or priorities for CEOs today. One is building resilience as an organizational muscle, and the other is having a courageous mindset towards change. In other words, leaning into change as opposed to away from it. Both of those are facilitated by self-awareness. Interesting.
So we have an event in Hawaii coming up in October. What are you going to be talking about?
Well, I can tell you what I think I'm going to be talking about now, but how much it's changed by the time Hawaii, I'm not sure. I'm going to be talking about leadership and the skills of leadership that are needed for today and the future. I mean, we have so many examples of dysfunctional leadership today. I mean, you only have to look at what's going on with climate change and the unwillingness of people who have the power to make huge change to do so. Why? Because they are either ignorant, which very few of them are, or they're playing greedy, which some of them are, or they're focused on their own self-aggrandizement and holding on to a position of power, which is preventing the decisions that need to be taken being taken, because it means they have to change. And it's fascinating if you look at how many of the super rich in the world have, hi Jean Marie, how many of them have actually set themselves up with underground bunkers in New Zealand and other countries around the world, where they want to retire to if come Armageddon. And that's kind of sad, really. But it reflects a mindset which is extremely destructive. And it's their behavior that is causing so much suffering to so many people, because it's not just that they've got all the money. And actually, by the way, they're not very happy. Money is not a gauge of happiness, which takes one back to drives and how one is driven. You know, I haven't had the conversation with many super rich people, but it would be an interesting conversation to say, well, what actually is driving you? What makes you wake up in the morning and feel you've got to have more money this evening than you have now?
And we're back to self-awareness again.
Precisely. Yeah.
Interesting. Jim Marie's joined us. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
And I hope are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Perfect.
All
And
good.
thank you, Thom. I know this is a very, very special time, and we really, really appreciate and respect your time sharing with us a little bit about who you are and what you're going to be speaking on and what is your passion and just the whole 9 yards, building up the excitement to Hawaii and to share with people the content that we are bringing forth. The value is going to be priceless. And we truly, truly want to highlight you today to share that. I know I came in the middle here, but I know you've got a wealth of knowledge. And Jonathan, I'm sure you're enjoying the conversation.
I don't get this level of quality of conversation very often. I love it. I thrive on this. I love it.
Truly, truly. So Thom, for the sake, if you have repeated this, I'm so sorry. Can you share with our audience your serenity and leadership? I mean, you talk about into leadership, but you have that ability to share the mental health and wellness. That's a key piece. And you cannot separate the two in my mind with business and mental health and wellness. The two of them are together. Did you touch upon that already?
Well,
a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't reflect on the title of my business, which is, as you say, Serenity and Leadership. But in a sense, it's an important title, and it does take me back to Jonathan, what we were saying, which is around self-awareness, and this ability to be present. And you can't do that if you don't have a level of serenity inside yourself. And it is actually extraordinarily inspiring for an awful lot of people when they have a leader who has a sense of serenity around them. Because again, when we talk about leading into the void where all is uncertain, all is unknown, what people tend to do is to turn to their leader and say, please lead me.
What are we doing next? Yeah. Yeah.
It's a human request. And for leaders who come from that steady, solid base, and what that exudes is trust. And when people feel that they are trusted, they will do almost anything for you. So it's a virtuous circle. The self-awareness, the serenity, the presence, and all the good things that come out of, again, the things I've talked about, the feminine, which is empathy, compassion, the willingness to be vulnerable, and actually not so much the willingness, but the courage to be vulnerable. So these are all virtuous skills. And I think that You know, if you're in a workplace where even if things are crazy, the leaders have a sense of groundedness, so they're not being washed away by the craziness, but they have that sense of, it is agility, but it's also solidity. Then it's incredibly reassuring. And if people feel safe, which is the other word I haven't used enough of, but safe, and, you know, in the common parlance, psychologically safe, then the levels of stress are low. And by the way, inclusion is high. Because you can't actually feel included unless you feel psychologically safe. So all of those are reducing stresses. And I talked about the 70% of CEOs who are looking for a better, what was it, nearly 70% of the C-suite are seriously considering quitting for a job that better supports their well-being. If the stress is lower, mental health is better, well-being is stronger, psychological safety is better, and therefore a lot of the other things that we're looking for around inclusion, diversity, and all these very difficult conversations get much easier. So yeah, I mean, these generalizations, and of course in most countries and societies, these things are different. The levels of, for instance, the levels of racial awareness or gender bias and all these things, they're societal and they are geographical. But you know, I'm working on general principles, and so
they're universal.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a rock in a raging river. You know, it's like that's like that kind of solid base point I'm trying to get get out of the torrent.
It's interesting because I use a slightly different metaphor. Because you know, I went down the Grand Canyon, the rapids, back in 2013, and one of the things that I really observed there, because we had some canoeists as well as the rafters, and to watch a canoeist go down a rapid is very interesting, because I mean, it's kind of the same with the rafts themselves, because you can point it in the right direction, but once you're in the rapid, you can't turn around and you can't stop. But what you can do is allow your gut to make the right decisions, because if you stay in your head, you will you'll come to grief. And so it's much more instinctual, and so it's not I don't think it's so much about being a rock, but it's about having the presence of mind to just make the very small adjustments that you can, given that the roar and the flood of the river is taking you down.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And to add to that, Thom, sometimes it's the adjustment is to do nothing, to allow yourself the ability to flow and to take it in. But you're right, to do a minor adjustment.
Yeah,
it truly does make a difference. I want to touch on that. You had the excellent metaphor, Jonathan. You don't even know this yet, so I'm excited. One of the things that we are doing in Hawaii is there will be a canoe team building opportunity. And so I think that that's so appropriate. we're having this conversation.
Yeah. I've got an amazing sunset going on in the background here. Yeah, I was always a disaster in a canoe, I have to say. So don't look to me to be some kind of role model. When I went down the Grand Canyon, I definitely didn't get into any of the canoes. I think it's my body constitution. It doesn't sort of mix with canoe very well. But yeah, but I think that just to finish that metaphor, what you do get sometimes are the kind of king canoes, the people who sit on their chair and tell the sea to go back, or tell the river not to go, or to tell climate change not to come, you know. And you're getting it with AI in some places. I spoke to a very senior executive today, and we really quite disagreed about the level of impact that AI is going to have. And I heard an old voice in her. You know, I respect her. She's been a very respected leader for many years. But I really don't think many people understand the impact of AI and how it has many facets. And it is completely uncertain. You know, they were saying that if you look at the hype that comes with a new technological introduction, you get this sort of parabolic increase, and some of them just drop off the other side. And Meta, with its the VRs and so on, is a good example of that. But actually, in sort of recent history, the introduction of the iPhone is one that stands out, and the introduction of GPS is another, and AI is a third. In other words, it doesn't drop off again; it keeps going, and so the introduction of AI is a very, very, very significant thing, and I think actually everybody should be studying it and really looking at how it can affect them and what they do, because I think the more we talk about it, the more informed we can be, and the less well, I'm not going to say the less fearful we will become, because actually I think some of the things you could find out are actually terrifying. But this is not a time to put your head in the sand.
Correct. I think adaptability is key. I think, you know, the people who are going to be replaced by AI are the people who don't know how to use it.
That's
I think
right.
Learning how to use it is important. It's imperative, because it's not going to go away. And
yeah. It's funny because there was somebody reflecting on, you know, what are the jobs that aren't going to be affected by AI, and everybody talks about plumbers. And one of the reasons they talk about plumbers is because it's so damn difficult to get under the sink to replace the U-bend and that. But that's today. You know, how long is it before there's you know, Boston Robotics
dog
that have made the most amazing robots? I mean, unbelievable robots, you know, that can do somersaults and land perfectly balanced and all sorts of things, quite apart from dance. How long is it before they don't come up with a robot that can go under your sink? I was very struck when I went to God, I can't remember the name of the art museum, art gallery in New York, and there's one floor that's dedicated to indigenous peoples and their suffering and abuse and so on, but there's another floor which has these little stages, if you like, of places that reflect workers after a kind of Armageddon. So who are the people, you know, that there's the street cleaners and the, you know, all the people who are so looked down upon in our societies, like and carers,
yeah.
you know, and yet they are actually essential workers. And each one has got each little cameo has got the script, you know, what they're feeling like and what a day's work is like. Fascinating.
It's interesting. Yep.
Could you share with us? So we're going to be talking a little bit definitely about the leadership, but the mental health and wellness. When you have your talk, and then you'll be doing a workshop, mastermind, if you could share with our audience, what will that look like? Or at least, do you have the ability to share one or two of the best kept secrets that maybe, you know, would give a hint to why they should definitely pique their interest and make sure that they attend the Hawaii event, because we're definitely going off the rails here, so to speak, with the amount of opportunities that we're giving entrepreneurs to build up them and to build up their business. And it's not just on the outside, this is the inside out. So if you could share maybe a couple of tools or techniques or something special that would really be attractive to an entrepreneur, why they need to hear this.
Well, I've talked a lot about self-awareness. So I suspect that the people who are going to come and work with me are going to be curious about themselves. If they're not curious, they probably won't want to come. There's one exercise I do which gets I put people in pairs and we go through a little exercise that's called repeating questions, and that has the ability in a really very short space of time to get people out of their conscious mind and into the unconscious. And so there's a number of sort of things that one can look at, but one that I've demonstrated a couple of times online recently is asking people what drives them, because as I said earlier, drive is at a superficial level is fairly clear for most people, but the deep drives are not clear. And I think when you can reveal that it was a teacher in, you know, when you were 6 years old who said something, and actually that has warped your life ever since. It's an amazing revelation, which gives you often the wish, the will to do something about it. And you know, we can give some tools in order to do that. Another thing is about purpose. You know, I think one thing is drive, another is purpose, and they're not the same. Purpose is something, in a sense, purer. It comes from a different place. So exploring what one's purpose is, and that's not something that's static in my mind. It changes, it varies, it shifts with the winds of life. So that's another exploration I might well do. I like to respond to the energy in the room and see who's there and what they bring. We ran a webinar last Thursday, and one of the bits of feedback that we got from an attendee was it would have been good to go deeper. Well, that's difficult on a webinar, but it made, and they said, well, you could have asked us at the beginning what we were looking for. And I'm not sure how much that would have changed things, but it would have been an interesting question to ask. So I think I respond best to the energy in the room. So I try not to be too stuck in a plan before I go in there.
No battle plan survives contact with the enemy.
No, but and that's very, very true with regards to the energy in the room. Jonathan and Thom, we were on a Zoom call.
Oh, can't hear you. You've gone quiet. There you go.
There we go. Okay, we were on a Zoom call last week, and it was the energy in the room. And talking about Hawaii, talking about the various courses, the masterminds, the people, and the various topics and categories. It just was on fire, and I recognized how impactful it is, and the changes that when you are in an event or in a meeting such as that, it does make a difference on where the energy is and what the topic is. So you're very smart in stating, yes, this is our topic, but you will know how deep or what direction that it will go to. And I think this is important, Jonathan, for our audience to know. This is a custom event. This is not where we have a book and we are doing it exactly that's in the book. No,
syllabus. We're going to present a syllabus. No, we're not.
Nope.
No, we're not.
No, this is tailored. This is tailored, truly custom. Let's see where we go with this. This is huge, though, and I do guarantee is there will be a transformation. People, you cannot help that if you put into what we are doing, what we are saying, what my experts have, it will truly, truly make a difference, not only in your life, but in your business. It will do both.
Absolutely. We are absolutely calling it an event because I think it's going to be eventful. I'm very conscious of time and we want to wrap up this particular presentation. So just to recap what we're doing here, October 2023, we are getting together on Kona, on the big island of Hawaii, and we are going to be covering three main core pillars. One of them is absolutely business and entrepreneurship. It's very much about financial wellness and income and money and profit. Another aspect is the mind, body, spirit aspect. So you're a holistic vehicle. You're a guest in this vehicle called the human body, and it's all about how you manage that. And we are absolutely going to be talking about mental health because, as an entrepreneur, your biggest asset is your brain and your mind and your drives and your purpose and all that kind of stuff. So there are three main areas that we're covering for the whole 7 days. Our invitation to you, if you're watching this right now or watching it on replay, is would you like to come and join us in Hawaii? What we're doing is the Entrepreneurs Accelerator Summit. It's the 22nd to the 29th of October in Hawaii. Ultimately, our aim is to be able to help you create a 5-hour work week to live longer and healthier. The Hawaiians knew a thing or two about that. And ultimately to build your business empire to the point where you can retire early. So live longer, but not have to work longer. That's where we're going. So working less hours, making more money, leaving a legacy, creating new innovative products and services. We're going to actually show you how to use AI to do that. Training your body to store and generate more energy, or mana, as they call it in Hawaii, or chi in China, or ki in Japan. We're going to cover a lot of different things from mind, body, spirit, business, mental point of view. So the 7-day Entrepreneur Summit is valued at $7,400 currently. We're also going to be throwing in accommodation to that. So you're going to be staying at the King Kamehameha Resort in Kona, which is actually a hotel built on a sacred site. So that's part of the package as well. So you have to worry about accommodation. We're also going to have a firewalk experience made famous by Tony Robbins. It's been around since India days when firewalking became a thing there. The Hawaiians used to walk over recently cooled lava. So we're going to do a firewalk in Hawaii. How cool is that? On top of that, you're going to have the Island Breeze luau. So we're going to have a genuine outdoor Hawaiian food, Hawaiian entertainment under Hawaiian sky on a sacred site as all part of the experience. So that whole thing is valued at $12,500. If it gave you a 5-hour work week, would it be worth investing that kind of money? If it helps you live longer. I just buried a friend of mine, in fact, two childhood friends of mine, both died of cancer within about 2 weeks of each other. One was diagnosed 2 weeks prior to his death. That was a wake-up call for all of us. Is it worth 12.5 grand to make sure that doesn't happen to you? Would it be worth it to retire 5 years early? Put a price on that. Bring forward that date by 5 years. You know how these things work. It's worth 12.5 grand. We're not charging that. It's going to be 7.5 when we go to our full price later in the year. But right now it's 5,444 is the price for 7 days in Hawaii. There are various tickets available. If you go to acceleratedentrepreneur.org, you can see all the details, all the speakers, the daily itinerary, everything that's there. You can either do nothing and get sick of seeing us on the internet, our social media stuff, our live streams, our success stories, and wondering what would happen if I had gone to that thing I missed. Or go to the website, book your seat, and join us in Hawaii. That's our invitation to you. So,
absolutely. Jonathan, real
yes.
quickly, I just want to mention that the special price that we had, I mean, it is for a limited number of tickets. And so when those are sold, the price will be at the $7,444. And that's it. So I would highly suggest that people act sooner rather than later. Just my thoughts.
I'm also hearing seagulls. Am I hallucinating, or did you organize that just for this meeting?
You know what? I am okay. So I am outside. I am under a beautiful canopy, and I am right near Lake Michigan. So the seagulls, and in between a thunderstorm. So I have myself on mute for a little bit, but yes, well, there are the seagulls are present. So it was on cue. It was on cue.
The air is clearing and the pressure is lifting. Interesting. All right, Thom, any last words before we wrap up?
Self-awareness. If people want to improve their self-awareness, to be ready for the changes that are coming, then come and listen to what I have to say.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And this again is Thom Dennis, who hails from the UK. And Thom, could you share, or am I jumping the gun, Jonathan? I wanted him to share at least his contact information.
Absolutely. If someone wants to get in touch with you, Thom, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Send me a telegram.
Fax machine.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Thom with an H, Thom, Dennis. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all the rest of it. My business is Serenity in Leadership. And the website is serenityinleadership.com. I have a YouTube channel, and I'd love you to look at that and subscribe, because that really helps us to put out yet more good material. That we have some great material there, and I really encourage people to come and have a look and listen to all the conversations that we're having about leading responsibly with integrity and purpose. That's the title of the main podcast series. And of course, if you want a leadership challenge, then I have my retreat in Guatemala before Hawaii, which is called Leading Through the Void, which I also spoke about. So there you go. Thank you.
This is all good. Oh, so good, Jonathan, right?
We are spreading the light as fast as we can.
We are.
And
Is
if we
there
don't do it,
anything
our
else,
AI
Jonathan?
avatars will do it for us. What was that?
Is there anything else we need to touch upon for our audience other than, come for the networking? We've got so many wonderful people that you want to know. You really, really want to know. Their spirits are and their souls are they're just beautiful people, but intelligent, brilliant. You're not going to find this 7 days being with the individuals that are speaking, having lunch with them, having breakfast with them, passing them in the halls, having conversations, carrying on that the tempo that you're going to leave with. You're definitely getting more. And in fact, the value on this, Jonathan, and I will keep saying that, is priceless.
And it's in Hawaii. And if you've never been to Hawaii before, it has a very, very special quality to it. It's one of 3 magic locations on the planet: the Sedona, Hawaii, and the other one, which I can never remember. But it has a powerful effect on people when they get there. So just being there is a big, big deal. And Thom said it really perfectly. It's the difference between listening to an LP on a stereo and actually being in the concert, being in the stadium. It's 2 different things. And you definitely want to be there if you can. So thank you for being here today. Thank you, Thom, for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Thom. Yes.
We will be doing this with each of our speakers. You're going to see all of these, and they will be on our YouTube channel shortly. So keep around, follow, like, share, keep in touch with us and follow the story. And if you can join us, we would love to have you there. As they say in Hawaii, a hui ho, which means see you later.
A hui ho.
A hui ho. Take care.
A hui ho.
Bye-bye.
Mahalo.